shalakaya chakshormilitam jena tasmai shri guruve namaha. Vanchakalpadrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurati Se Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta, is it? Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. So we are continuing with Srimad Bhagavad-gita. We are in the middle of chapter 2. We left off at verse 38, where Krishna is speaking about this equanimity of vision. In the midst of duality, to be focused on our path of duty. And he was making the point that if we are doing our duty, no matter what the external results, we are always successful. Within the world of duality, there may be a calculation, oh, you did well or you didn't do well, you failed or you succeeded. But actually, from a higher consideration, you're always successful. Because you are acting according to truth and to higher principles. So that was where we left off. Considering this wonderful verse, considering pleasure and pain, gain and loss, and victory and defeat to be one and the same, fight. No sin will be incurred by you. Sukha, dukkha, happiness, sadness, labha, alabha, gain and loss, jaya, jaya, victory, defeat. To consider all of these things to be one and the same. Because normally in our daily lives, our emotions are going up and down based on these things, right? Somebody was nice to us, we're happy. Somebody was unkind to us, we're unhappy, right? We're like being tossed around by the waves of the environment, and it can become very exhausting. And actually, all that's happening is we're allowing ourselves to become a prisoner and a slave to our circumstances and our own mind. People, generally people think that freedom means to be able to do whatever you want. But actually, real freedom means to be satisfied and equipoised no matter what's happening in the environment. Whether you can do what you want or you can't do what you want, you're still satisfied within. Whether the environment is kind to you or unkind to you, you're still equipoised and fulfilled within that is real freedom. As Srila Sridhar Maharaj expressed it, freedom of the senses or freedom from the senses. We consider freedom from the senses to be superior than to just have free, wild senses that can do whatever they want. That doesn't lead to a happy result. So to be free from the urge and the pull of the senses, the reaction of the senses, that is a superior platform to stand on. So that was where we left off. And now we've come to verse 40. Wait, no, sorry. 39. Okay, so we'll chant this verse together. Esha tu bihita sankye buddhir yoge timam shinu buddhya yukto jaya parta karma bandham prahasyasi. I have revealed to you this knowledge, buddhi, of the soul. Now hear from me how to act in this knowledge, bhakti yoga, through which you will be able to free yourself from the bondage of action. Commentary. And as we mentioned, I think last week, the commentaries in this edition of Bhagavad-gita are few and far between. So when there's a commentary, we really pay attention, because it's only a handful of verses that Srila Sridhar Maharaj is giving one. So it's a significant point being made here. And this is actually taken from the writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It will be revealed that buddhi yoga, yoga of wisdom, is a singular path. When buddhi yoga is seen to be limited by the ideal of action, it is known as karma yoga. When it extends beyond action up to the peak of knowledge, it is known as jnana yoga or sankhya yoga. And when, transcending the limitations of both action and knowledge, it touches bhakti or devotion, it is then known as bhakti yoga, or perfectly pure and complete buddhi yoga. So this is it's something of a difficult idea to understand, this concept of buddhi yoga. It's a fine idea, but what's essentially being said here is that actually, from one perspective, you'll say there in Bhagavad-gita there's karma yoga, there's jnana yoga, there's ashtanga yoga, there's bhakti yoga. But from another angle, we can say actually there's one yoga that's being presented, and that can be referred to as buddhi yoga, and that's like referring to something like the natural flow of our consciousness, and when it is limited by the ideals of karma, then it is known as karma yoga. And when it is limited by the ideals of jnana yoga, it is known as jnana yoga. And when it is fully expressing itself, then it is known as bhakti yoga. And actually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's commented that buddhi yoga is actually higher than bhakti yoga, because he said that bhakti yoga, strictly speaking, refers to particular practices that are helpful for the development of bhakti, like the 9 practices of devotion, hearing and chanting and so on. Bhakti yoga implies like a kind of discipline, right? Like a sadhana, a discipline, something that you have to do. This is what I'm doing. Whereas buddhi yoga refers to something broader, something more natural within the self that's coming out. Something like that. I'm not able to properly describe it. It's a very fine point, but something like that. Gurudev also, actually, maybe we can just quickly look it up right now. Gurudev actually discusses it in Revealed Truth. Let me look it up quickly. Revealed Truth. Here we are. Here it is. Maybe it's not here. Okay, here it is. In this verse, Krishna encourages everyone to take up buddhi yoga, the yoga of wisdom. Buddhi yoga is the first form of yoga mentioned in Bhagavad-gita, and buddhi yoga is the basis of all the forms of yoga Krishna goes on to describe. Buddhi yoga is a very wide idea. It is the basis of yoga itself, and all other forms of yoga are expressions of buddhi yoga. Okay. Well, that's a very nice way of putting it. It is the basis of yoga itself, and all other forms of yoga are expressions of buddhi yoga. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to verse 40, and this is quite a famous verse. Nehabhi kramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate swapamapyasya dharmasya chayate mahato bhayat. On this path there can be no loss and no harm. The slightest practice of such a spiritual ideal saves one from the greatest fear. Commentary. Mahabhai, the greatest fear, is generally considered to be the fear of repeated birth and death in this world. But Mahabhai also refers to Sayujya Mukti, the liberation of merging into the impersonal, non-differentiated consciousness of Brahmalok, Viraja, or a kind of impersonal samadhi. So, this is like this expression, Maha Boy. Boy means fear, and Maha means great, as you know. So the great fear, like generally within the context of a Vedic culture, that refers to samsara, this cycle of birth and death, this entanglement. And then, generally persons, they're aspiring for moksha, for liberation from that whole cycle. But for the devotees, for the bhakti yogis, liberation is also frightening. That's also Mahabhai. That's also, because liberation in the ordinary sense, in the sense of merging into this spiritual oneness, that's something fearful. This sayuja mukti. So for the devotees, both enjoyment in this world and also freedom from this world, they're both undesirable things. They're both fearful things. Only to be situated in one's normal, wholesome, and happy position as a loving servitor of Krishna, that is the only, option. That's the only good option. There's no other good option. Everything else is fearful. So the yogis and the jnanis, they're performing so many great austerities to try to to be liberated. And the devotees are like this, stay away from me. Please don't come near me, Moksha Devi, I don't want to be seen in your company. Okay. Renunciation alone leads to sayuja mukti, the cessation of birth and death, but not to a life in the positive plane. So it takes you out of liberation, moksha, takes you out of suffering, but it doesn't actually give you entrance into a positive plane. It's like if somebody's twisting your arm and they stop twisting your arm. Like, are you going to go and alert the press? Oh, my arm's not being twisted. So what? It's not so. I was in prison. I got out of prison. Okay. Now you're just an average person. So what? You have to actually achieve. We're not going to write a newspaper article because you got freed from prison. Now you're just kind of a normal average person. But we want to see you make a positive contribution to society. What do you? Okay, you stopped doing something bad. Good boy. We'll pat you on the head. But now what are you actually going to do? That's just the beginning. So renunciation alone leads to sayuja mukti, the cessation of birth and death, but not to a life in the positive plane. It takes one to a permanent burial in Brahmalok. The demon of mukti will devour one wholesale, and therefore it is even more dangerous than this ordinary life of action and reaction. It's like it's described sometimes as a type of spiritual suicide. So in that sense, from the devotional perspective, it's even worse than just being an ordinary person enjoying in this world, because you're entering this dark hole, this plane of nothingness, and you can get stuck there for ages and ages of time. Mukti means a strike in the organic system, so it must be avoided. For example, to either ignore duties in a factory or to declare a strike by cessation of duties are both abnormal. Bhukti, exploitation, and mukti, renunciation, are both fearsome ghosts. Therefore, here, Mahabhai means the great apprehension of falling prey to both the ghost of exploitation leading to birth and death, as well as the ghost of committing suicide by merging into the impersonalism of incarceration and Brahmalok. Fear of both Bhoga Bhumi, the land of exploitation, and Tyaga Bhumi, the plain of renunciation. It is also stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and this is a famous verse, Bhukti mukti spriya yavat pishachi hridi vartate tavad bhakti sukhasya cha katam abhyudayo bhavat. The ecstasy of devotion to Krishna will never appear in a heart that is haunted by the ghosts of exploitation and renunciation. So, and this is why in the cultivation of pure devotion, there's so much emphasis put on the necessity for cleansing, for purification. And this is what distinguishes us from imitationists, from sahajas, because they want to, those persons with their current body and senses and mind, they want to dive into this very pure realm. But if you do that, you'll confuse the two things. You'll think what is material is spiritual and what is spiritual is material. So that's why there's so much emphasis for those in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the real line of Mahaprabhu. First take a shower. First clean yourself up, Then go to the party, Like first clean up, take a shower, use some soap, put on some fresh clothes, and then go have a good time, Because otherwise you'll think that dirt is something pure and something high. So, it's dangerous. So there's so much emphasis as I said, in the line of pure devotion to, an understanding we have these contaminants within our heart. And not that we're going to sit down in a corner and just cry about it, but it's just about understanding what my situation is and then how can I move on from here. We can't pretend. You're not going to solve a problem by pretending there's not a problem. The first step is admitting there's a problem. Then you can get past the problem. This is how, right, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? First you have to raise your hand and say, I have a problem, I'm an alcoholic. You can't solve it by pretending you're not. You won't get anywhere like that. Oh, why are you being so pessimistic? Why are you saying you're an alcoholic? You're not an alcoholic. Be positive. Okay, that's nice, but that may not be very helpful. It may not get you very far. It's not being pessimistic to acknowledge that you have issues, to acknowledge you have a problem. No, first you acknowledge, but you don't get stuck there. Then you take proactive steps to move beyond them. So it's not a negative process, it's a positive process to identify what's wrong and then identify how to go beyond that. So this expression, Bhakti Devi, how can we expect her to come into a heart that is polluted by these witches? This, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj has expressed, this very high class lady of devotion. You can't expect her to come and sit down next to two, very low class ladies. You have to give her some nice sitting place. So our hearts have to become pure, have to become clean, and then we can invite Bhakti Devi to enter there. Okay, let's move on. Anya bilashita shunyam yana karma janavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. The highest devotion is that which is cultivated for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord Krishna, with no desire except to serve him, and divested of all external attempts, such as worldly action, knowledge in search of the impersonal absolute, or the meditational attempt to become one with God. Only the Supreme Lord is Abhay beyond apprehension. Therefore, nothing but participation in his service can free one from the ghosts of exploitation and renunciation, bhukti and mukti. If we subtract bhukti and mukti, then only positive bhakti, devotion, is the remainder. Therefore, without devotion, everything is mahabhai, great danger. So there's a couple of very nice points here. One that, the Lord, he's sometimes referred to as how can I say? It is sometimes expressed like in poetry that his lotus feet, they are the abode of fearlessness. Or in other words, he is the abode of fearlessness. And so therefore, if somebody goes to take shelter of him, then they will also be beyond fear. Then this is, in the title of Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, this AC, right? It stands for, Abhay Charan. Abhay Charan means the fearless lotus feet, referring to the Lord. And there's a very nice story, you've heard maybe, Srila Sridhar Maharaj's one of his godbrothers, Jajavar Maharaj, Srila Saraswati Thakur requested him to take sannyas, to take to the renounced order when he was relatively young, like in his late 20s or something. And then some of Jajavar Maharaj, he agreed to that. And then some of his relatives, they put something in his ear, like, oh, you're so young, you're very good looking. How will you be able to live the renounced order for your life? So then he was starting to feel some anxiety about whether he could really do this. And then somebody went and represented that to Srila Saraswati Thakur. Maybe it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj even. And Saraswati Thakur said, why are you afraid? You are going to take shelter of the Abhay Charanaravinda, the fearless lotus feet of the Lord. You are going to take shelter of the place where fear does not exist. So why should you be fearful? There's no need to be fearful. It is a plane beyond fear. Fear is only a result of being in connection with these lower tendencies of exploitation and renunciation. But if we are being aloof, if we are detached from those things, absorbed in the spirit of dedication, then there's nothing to fear. And then there's another very nice point here, which is that actually, and it's so encouraging to consider this, that actually devotion, it is the natural propensity of the soul. So it's not like, normally if you're going to acquire something, it's like you're taking something from outside of yourself, within. Like if you're going to study something at university or school, you're going to study mathematics or literature, you're imbibing knowledge from outside and taking that within your own mind. But when it comes to devotion, it's a little different, because it's not something separate from ourselves. It's not something outside of ourselves. It's something inherent to ourselves. It's something that is innate to our true nature and our true existence. So therefore, all of these other things, they are just coverings. The tendencies for exploitation and renunciation, they're not like at the core of our existence. They're superficial coverings. So on one level, our spiritual development, our spiritual progress, it's about these covers coming out and leaving us, allowing that natural wealth within to arise. It's not that we're creative. It's not like we're just starting from scratch. There's nothing there. Like people talk about how humans are inherently evil. Like there's this debate around this subject matter, right? Are humans inherently good or inherently evil, right? This is a debate that goes on. So we say, every soul is inherently very pure and very good. And the tendencies for evil, they're superficial coverings that are obstructing the natural tendency of the soul. So it is very encouraging. It is very encouraging for ourselves, and also when we are observing others. When we see some behavior, which is not so encouraging, we can remember that this isn't really who they are. They're identifying with some external layer, some material layer, but it's not who they really are. Everyone has purity and goodness at their core. It may be the coverings are very thick, And it may take many lifetimes to become free of those coverings, but they're still just coverings. So that is also very encouraging. This avritam in this verse here, avrita means coverings. These tendencies for anyabilash, karma, and jnana, for our whimsical desires, our organized desires, and our attraction to liberation, these are just coverings to the soul, and the tendency for devotion. Okay, we'll move on to verse 41. This is a very wonderful verse. Also, many of these verses in chapter 2, they're very well known and often quoted verses. So together we'll chant. Yavavasatnika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakaya nantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. I think I messed up the first word. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka yanantascha buddhayo yavasayinam. O descendant of the Kru dynasty, resolute intelligence dedicated to me is one-pointed. I am its only objective. But irresolute intelligence is splayed by endless desires for mundane enjoyment. This Vyavavasatmika buddhi, this is what we aspire for. One-pointed consciousness, to have our eyes on the goal at all times. Like in that famous story of Arjuna, when Dronacharya, their weapons master, is training the Pandavas, and they have this doll, a bird doll on a tree, and he's asking them, Dronacharya is asking them one by one, okay, are you ready to shoot the bird? And what do you see? Oh, I see the bird. Okay. And what about you? Oh, I only see the head of the bird, and anything else. Oh, I'm also seeing the branches around the bird, like this. And then finally he comes to Arjuna. What do you see, Arjuna? I see the eye of the bird. Do you see anything else? No, I don't see anything else. I only see the eye of the bird. So this is the type of one-pointed consciousness that we want to have in our spiritual practice. Not being distracted by the pull of the mind and the senses and the body, but always have our focus on what is our spiritual necessity at any given moment. What is the spiritual consideration in any given moment and circumstance? And this verse, I wanted to read, there's very wonderful commentary on this verse by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This verse, there's this commentary by Vishwanath, as I said, but it had a very profound effect on Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, and especially in connection with his decision to leave India and to come to the West to spread this movement. This verse was something that had, it was a part of his inspiration in taking up this cause and making such an extreme sacrifice. 69 years old with nothing in his pocket, to travel across the Atlantic, it is inconceivable. So this is the commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. My sadhana. So this is it's not a normal commentary, but it's he's paraphrasing the verse. He's expressing what is the mood of this verse. My sadhana is to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, to remember and glorify Him as instructed by my Guru. That is also my goal, sadhya. And this is a very nice point here that, in the highest stage, the practice and the goal they merge into one thing. The sadhana and the sadhya. It's not that, oh, I'm doing this and then I'm doing this to get there. But no, I'm just doing this and I'm doing this so it will become sweeter to do this. Like I'm not that I'm doing this and then I'm going to get a certificate and I'm going to be part of this secret club of very special people. Like, no, just I'm doing this so that I can enjoy doing this even more. Like, like I remember once when I was going through Chaitanya Charitamrita, there was this one verse. It was just, a simple verse, and many verses like this, but somehow it was like an epiphany for me. And the verse was just mentioning, as it mentions many occasions, that Mahaprabhu attended a morning arati, right, of Lord Jagannath. And I was like, wow, like Mahaprabhu is going to arati. Like, you're familiar with arati, means the word worship, yeah. So I was like I go to arati, like I go to morning arati, and the Lord himself, he's also going to arati. Like, we're both doing that. So what's the difference between him doing it and my doing it? Consciousness, We're doing the same thing. It's not like he's doing some special secret thing that nobody else can do. Of course, that's there too, that element. But for the most part, he's doing everything that we do. He's chanting the Lord's name. He's worshiping the deity. He's associating with the devotees. He's taking prasadam. He's serving prasadam. Like, he's doing everything that we do. But his consciousness is situated on a vastly superior plane. That's the difference, So in that sense, we can appreciate sometimes that, at a higher level, the practice and the goal, they become one and the same thing. So my practice, my sadhana, is to serve the Lord, to remember and glorify him as instructed by my Guru, and that is also my goal, sadhya. It is my life-sustaining medicine, for I cannot give up the sadhana and the sadhya. This is my most desirable object, for I cannot give up the sadhana and the sadhya. He repeats himself. I'm not making a mistake here. He repeats himself in this again and again. This is my most desirable object, for I cannot give up the sadhana and the sadhya. This is my most desirable object, my duty, and nothing else is my duty. Nothing else is desired, even in dreams. So this vyavavasatmika buddhi, this one-pointed consciousness, this is what's being described here. Nothing else is desired, even in dreams. There may be happiness or sorrow. Samsara may be destroyed or may not be destroyed. That is no loss for me. Let there only be resolute intelligence fixed in pure bhakti. Very, very beautiful. I'm just going to read it one more time. My sadhana is to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, to remember and glorify him as instructed by my Guru. That is also my goal, sadhya. It is my life-sustaining medicine, for I cannot give up the sadhana and the sadhya. This is my most desirable object, for I cannot give up the sadhana and the sadhya. This is my most desirable object, my duty, and nothing else is my duty. Nothing else is desired, even in dreams. There may be happiness or sorrow. Samsara may be destroyed or may not be destroyed. That is no loss for me. Let there only be resolute intelligence fixed in pure bhakti. And this is what is so extraordinary, that someone who's in this state of consciousness, what's happening around them, it becomes of no consequence. It doesn't matter anymore, because, that inner cultivation, that inner connection is so powerful that it overrides any experience of the objective world. So this is why these devotees, these very high level devotees, they can say things like this. Like, it doesn't matter whether I'm liberated or not liberated, whether I have to be born again or I'm not born again. It doesn't matter. Because what's going on within them is so fulfilling and so of such great depth that it doesn't matter. Just like, in our own experiences, sometimes we get some hint of that, like say you're just in a really good mood one day, and then you don't mind what happens to you, right? We all have experiences like that. Like somebody's rude to you, or your car breaks down, or the train is late, but you're just in such a good mood, you don't care. Maybe you had a really nice talk with your best friend that day. You're flying high, you're on cloud 9. Then these things don't bother you as much as they normally would, And then on the other hand, sometimes if you're just in a bad mood, then every little thing is bothering you. Someone says one tiny thing and you just explode, You bang your arm on a chair or something and you explode. Every little thing is triggering. You get triggered, right? You get triggered by everything. There are days like that. And then there are other days where you're just, you can do whatever you want, say whatever you want. Nothing's going to spoil my mood. So we understand everything is consciousness. It's all about consciousness. So for persons who are situated so deeply in this consciousness of love and service to the Lord, to Krishna, to the divinity, it really doesn't affect them whatever happens around them. Okay, we'll go back to the main text here. So, let's see. Verse 42. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschitaha vedavadadata parta nanyarashtiti vadinaha. O Partha, unwise persons, not knowing that the chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth, are fond of interpreting the fleetingly enchanting words of the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas as ultimate. So as perhaps we were mentioning in one of the earlier classes, the Vedas, they're very, very broad. And they, the Vedas are like a long-term plan, a very long-term plan. And they're casting a very wide net, and they're bringing in persons of all dispositions. So for persons who are addicted to selfishness and personal enjoyment, there's a path prescribed for them. For persons who are addicted and more attracted to renunciation, to austerity, there are paths for them. And then on the highest level, for the more normal-minded persons, the path of bhakti, devotion, is there. So for persons who are at more of a base level of very firmly identifying with the body and the needs of the body, then there's this karma kanda section, which is helping these persons to regulate their selfishness, to keep their selfishness under control, to manage it. Because you can't just outright tell them, forget it. No, you've got to treat them like children. You've got to give them some candy, You can't just say, take the medicine. You've got to say, no, take your medicine, I'll give you some candy, I'll give you some chocolate. So that's what the karma kanda section is like. Okay, you want to do this or achieve this or have this, then you can do that. But worship this deva, chant this mantra, make this sacrifice, make it connected. So you're living some type of a controlled and religious life. You're not just blatantly wreaking havoc within the environment, doing whatever you want, wherever you want, and disturbing everyone and interfering with the natural order of things. So it's like, okay, you want to eat like this or do like this, or you want to have sex life, or you want to become rich, or whatever it is, right? Okay, you can do all of those things, but let's keep it a little controlled, and let's keep it in connection on some level with divinity. So you're not just acting completely independently. You're still connected with the higher plane. So this is the system of the Vedas. But the idea is not that you're meant to get stuck there. It's meant to be like, once you finish that course of things, then you emerge with some degree of purification, and you're ready for a higher path. So here Krishna is saying, the chief, what is the chief? Okay, this Karma Kanda section, this is dealing with people who are like really bogged down by material desires. But that's not the real final purpose of the Vedas. The chief directive of the Vedas is the attainment of the supreme truth. So, don't get stuck, don't get bewildered by the flowery, attractive language of this Karma Kanda section. No, don't get bewildered by this. Keep moving, keep moving. It's an obstacle course. That's one way you could see the Vedas. And not many get to the end, or everyone takes a different time, different length of time to get there, to be more optimistic. Okay, so 43. Kamatmana sargapada janma karma falapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishwarya gatim prati. Their hearts are filled with desires, and their goal is heaven. They advocate the many sacrifices and rituals that yield wealth, worldly pleasures, and high birth. 44. Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya pavita chetasam vyavasayamika buddhi samadona vidiyate. Vyavasayamika buddhi. So 44. Thus attached to enjoyment and opulence, deluded by these flowery words of the Vedas, they do not attain the resolve to dedicate themselves to the Supreme Lord. 45. Chai gunya vishaya veda nishtrai gunya bhavarjuna nirdvandvo nitya sattvasto niryoga kshema atmavam. O Arjuna, the Vedas deal with the three modes of material nature by accommodating fruitive action and liberation as an allowance and incentive. So this is a very concise way of explaining what I just said. They accommodate fruitive action and liberation as an allowance and incentive. So they're accommodating these people, and they're also giving them some motivation to practice religious life, who are ignorant of the true objective of the Vedas. But you, Arjuna, give up duality and all pursuits for gain and preservation. Stand ever in the plane of truth, and by the yoga of wisdom transcends the modes of nature. So Trigunya is referring to the three gunas of goodness, passion, and ignorance, which are pervading this material world and controlling our behaviors. So then Nirgun, Nishtraigunya, means the plane that is free from these gunas, these material qualities. So you, Arjuna, you take your stand in that plane. Rise above the entanglement of these lower energies. You take your stand in a higher plane. And nirdvandvo, free from duality, nitya sattvasto, take your stand in the highest truth. Be situated in the highest truth, in the eternal truth, not temporary truth. Nitya is eternal. So take your stand not in temporary truth, but take your stand in eternal truth. Be situated there. And then we have in parentheses here, I don't know, did I finish that? I'll read it. But you, Arjuna, give up duality in all pursuits for gain and preservation. Stand ever in the plane of truth, and by the yoga of wisdom transcends the modes of nature. The objective of the Vedas is transcendental. Without fruitive action or liberation, O Arjuna, and by fruitive action is meant action that is motivated by a particular result, right? Or fruit. O Arjuna, follow the transcendental path of devotion to the Lord as taught by the Vedas. Okay, verse 46. Yavanarta udapane sarvata sampluto dake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. As all the purposes served by several ponds can be served better by a large lake, similarly the fruits of worshipping the various gods by their respective Vedic prayers are surpassed by serving me. The knower of Brahman, who thus knows the purport of the Vedas, fulfills all life's objectives. So generally, these persons following this karma kanda section, each of the devas, they're responsible for a different department, right? So, like Saraswati Devi is responsible for knowledge, Lakshmi for wealth, and so on and so forth, right? So they're worshipping many different devas, for achieving particular results, So here the advice is given, like Krishna is the root of all of them. Instead of going to so many small ponds, just go to that main, that large lake, that central body of water. You can get everything that you need there. Go to the central cause. Verse 47. Now this is very famous and very helpful and important verse of Bhagavad-gita. Karmanyevadi karaste ma phaleshu karachana ma karma phala hiturbur mate sangostra karmani. Your right is to your work, never to the fruits. Be neither motivated by the fruit of action, nor inclined to give up action. So this is a pretty heavy statement here. This is a bitter pill, bitter medicine here. You only have a right to do your duty. You don't have any right to the results of your duty. Now, just right there, the whole capitalist, consumerist culture is just being slashed. Everybody just has to do their duty, and they're not allowed to consider any results. And so therefore, your action should never be influenced by the potential results, gain in your own interest. You should not be motivated to do something or to not do something on the basis of your own interest, the consideration of your own individual interest. Everything you do, it should be for the good of the center and for the good of the whole. And how it will affect you personally, that's not even something to think about. Oh, this is very, very heavy, very heavy. Because, our tendency is like that. We'll do something if we think there's something in it for ourselves. And then if we think there's not something in it for ourselves, then we'll be inclined to not do it. Why should I do it? What's the point? How does it benefit me? So we should not be influenced by either of these considerations. Our only right is to do our duty. So this is like a foundational principle of karma yoga. And it's also like kind of like a part of the, like one of the building blocks of devotion, you know. But whereas in the case of bhakti yoga, there's the positive element there, that everything we're doing, it's for Krishna's interest. You know, it's not that in this kind of like abstract way we're doing something good for the environment, but specifically we are acting according to Krishna's interest and leaving aside our own interest. So, again, as we mentioned last week, I think, these teachings of karma yoga, they're very helpful in applying them in our practice of bhakti. Okay, how are we doing for time? Maybe we'll just read one or two more verses. We're in verse 48, right? Yogastha ku karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. O Dhananjaya, give up the ego that you are the doer and be equipoised in success and failure. Thus stand firm in the plane of yoga and do your prescribed duties. Such a state of balance is indeed known as yoga. So this verse is elaborating upon this previous verse. Why is it that you don't have a right to the results of your actions? Because actually, you are not wholly responsible for your actions. Or as it said here, we are not the doers. And this is a point that, this is one of those things that devotees like to say a lot, but don't always understand what it means. What does that mean, that we are not the doer? And the meaning of that is explained later on in Bhagavad-gita, is that the only thing that the jiva soul can do is to desire for something. Our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj, he would often mention that these three propensities, these three, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word, but you understand what I'm saying. These three aspects to the jiva soul are three propensities, are for willing, for thinking, and for feeling. So the soul can do these three things. It can will, it can desire for something, it can feel, and it can think. But it can't actually do anything. Whether we can actually do something is dependent upon outside forces. Like if I want to pick up a glass of water, all I can actually do is desire to pick it up. But whether I can do that or not is dependent on many forces. Like, is my brain functioning properly? Are my muscles functioning properly? Then there's the law of gravity, laws of physics. Like, all of these things are coming together and allowing me to take a glass of water and to drink a sip. And then the processes of the tongue, the mouth, and the throat, all of these things, they're allowing me. But we've seen, right? Cases where persons, their minds are gone, or their muscles are gone, or they're not able to ingest anything. You have to put it through a tube, right? That happens. So can we or can we not? Fundamentally speaking, is it guaranteed that we can drink a glass of water if we want to? No, it's not. It's not at all. The only thing we can do is desire to drink. If we go and if we want to grow pineapples, then we can go and plant some pineapple seeds, right? But whether or not they actually grow, it's not dependent on us. We do our part, but then, there's the soil, there's fertilizer, there's the sun, there's the wind, there's the rain. There are there's the pollinators, and there's so many things in the environment that are supporting that and allowing that to take place. We just put some seeds in the ground, and then we're saying, these are my pineapples and nobody else can have them. These are mine, don't touch them. I'm going to sell them, I'm going to make money, and that money is going to be mine, and I'm going to use that money, which is mine, by the way, to build a house, which is going to be mine. Then I'm going to get married to a lady who's going to be my wife, and then we're going to have children who will be my children, and they'll do everything that I want for me because they are mine. Right? This is the I, me, and mine disease. But no, all we did was put some seeds in the ground. Like, did we create the earth? Did we create the sun? Did we create water, H2O? Right? No, there's this very complex, sophisticated, powerful system in place which is enabling this to happen. Even us being able to go and put seeds in the ground, that's beyond our ability, actually. We're being allowed to do that. So in that sense, we are not the doer. We're not actually able to do anything unless the Lord is allowing it. Unless the Lord and all of the Lord's energies and the systems which He's put in place are allowing that to take place. So therefore, the devotees, they have this type of detachment that, they just perceive themselves as instruments. We want to be an instrument of the Lord's will. That's all. We're not actually able to do anything on our own. Let us just be a conduit. Let us be a channel for the Lord's will to manifest. And then if they are successful, they don't have any pride or arrogance about that, because they're seeing it's not because of me. This is the Lord's creation. This is the part of the Lord's plan. It's all dependent on Him. Success or failure, it is all, victory, defeat is dependent on Him. I just want to be used by Him. So the devotees, they have this, there's this distinction between, what we do and what comes as a result. We normally equate these two things, right? I did that and so it's mine, but the devotees, they don't necessarily equate these two things. These are two separate things. This is in one category, that's in another category. They don't have this, this sense of possessiveness and ownership that we have over everything. Because they're seeing the real flow of things, they're seeing their actual position. They're seeing the actual, nature of things. Okay, maybe we'll stop there. You have to leave at 6, huh? Or 6:15.
Earlier. Yes.
Oh, really, huh? Oh, it's 20 to 6 now. Can you take some prasadam? There's some.
Yes, I put.
You'll pack, okay.
I pack.
Okay.
I pack her.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe you want to, but we'll finish with some kirtan now.
Okay.
Page is it page 60?
60.
Yeah. Actually, I would like to sing Jai Sachinandana. What is it? I'm not sure what page that is. Maybe page 20 something. What page is it? Page 30 something. Page 44. Jai Sachinandana Sura Muni Vandana Bhavabhaya Kandana Jayo He. Jai Sachinandana Sura Muni Vandana Bhavabhaya Kandana Jayo He. Sura Muni Vandana Bhavabhaya
kartana jayo he. Kalimala kartana jayo he. Nayana Purandara Vishwarupa Snehadhara Purandara Vishwarupa Nayana Purandara Vishwarupa Snehadhara Vishwambara Vishwarakayana Jai Lakshmi Vishnu Priya Vishwambara Priya Hiya Jaya Priya Kinkara Ishana Sisitaya Dvaita Rai Malini Srivasa Jai Sitaya Dvaita Rai Malini Srivasa Jai Jaya Chandra Shekharaya Chaja Jai Nityananda Rai Garadhara Jai Jai Jaya Nityananda Rai Garadhara Jai Jai Garadhara Jai Jai Jaya Hari Raj Namachaja Jai Nityananda Rai Garadhara Jai Jai Jaya Nityananda Rai Garadhara Jai Jai Jaya Hari Raj Namachaja Murari Mukunda Jai Parmanidhi Mahashai Murari Mukunda Jai Parmanidhi Mahashai Jai Jata Prabhu Parishada Vandi Savakara Pai Ara Mere Kripa Hoy Vandi Savakara Pai Ara Mere Kripa Hoy Bhakti Saparshada Prabhupada Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Krishna
Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Varya Ashtadhar Satashi Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Varya Ashtadhar Satashi Shri Bhakti Rakshak Shridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Amacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Saprashad Srimad Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Ganga Jamuna Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Shama Kund Radha Kund, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Vishwavyapi Tadiya Shakamat Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees and sincere seekers Ki Jai, the world devotees Ki Jai, all the virtual devotees Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande.